Hello, my name is Alexandria Gibson with the Sam Proctor Oral History Program. Today is September 13th, 2024, and I am interviewing Mykah Smith on Zoom. Please introduce yourself. What is your full name and can you spell it for me?
Hi, my name is Mykah Smith, Mykahsmith.
Awesome. So Mykah, when and where were you born?
I was born in Nassau, Bahamas in 1993.
What were your parents' names?
My parents' names are Anna Wilson Smith and Michael Smith.
Where did your family or your parents' lineage come from?
So my mother's family, her dad's side of the family was from Cat Island, and her
Okay.
mom's side of the family was from Fox Hill.
Okay. Fox Hill, Nassau?
Yeah, Fox Hill, Nassau.
Okay. Okay. And your father's family?
My father's father was from Turks and Caicos, but he passed away when he was 3. And
Okay.
then my grandmother was from Inagua, from Matthewstown.
Okay. Okay. So we have Inagua, Cat Island, Nassau, and Turks. All right. Um, where did your parents grow up?
So my mom grew up in Cat Island partially, and then her later teen years were in Nassau. But her childhood was in Cat Island.
Okay. What did your mother do for a living?
My mother is in financial services.
Okay, you were going to say something and I interrupted.
Oh no, and then I was gonna say my dad grew up his partial because my parents were both the youngest of all of their siblings.
Okay.
So that's when they had older siblings that had already moved to Nassau and like kind of made a little way for them. So they came over when they were like in their mid-teens.
Okay. Okay. Have you spent any time on Cat Island or any of the other family islands?
Yes, I've spent time on Cat Island. My adopted sister, she lives in Eleuthera, so I spent a lot of time in Eleuthera. I've been to Exuma, I've been to Grand Bahama, I've been to Andros.
Wait,
I've
are we
been...
considering Grand Bahama a family island?
No, sorry.
I'm like, wait a minute. It was a city when I was a kid.
Yeah, it's the second city. Yeah, but I've been to several family islands. I haven't been to all of them, but I've been to several.
Okay, so you mentioned you have an adopted sister that lives in Eleuthera. What part of Eleuthera?
She used to live in Harbor Island, but now she lives on Spanish Wells.
Okay, so she's a little farther north. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, okay. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Nassau, Bahamas. I grew up part of my childhood in Fox Hill, and then we moved to the suburbs when I was about 7.
Okay, and what was it like growing up in the capital?
I guess busy, but in the grand scheme of things, still island life. But I feel like I had a very outdoorsy childhood. We went back like for the summers to Cat Island and stuff. So we had a very good balance. And then yeah, like I said, our family always just raised us to be like outside doing stuff. So very outdoorsy kind of upbringing.
What kind of things did you do in the summers in Cat Island?
We would go to the beach, we would go fishing, we would get dragged along to our uncle's farm to help with different things. And we would just go on like adventures, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Just adventures. We had different family members that lived in different settlements. So we would kind of just like settlement hop. It was a great time to be alive.
Right, right. And so what did outdoorsy look like in New Providence?
Um, I mean, a lot of like, so my family name from Foxhill is Davis. So there's a street in Foxhill called Davis Street. So basically back in the day, my entire family lived along that street, but our family homestead is on that corner. And then my Grammy or my oldest aunt, because both my grandparents, my mom's parents died in a fire when I was 3. So my oldest aunt adopted me. So She has a house through there as well. So growing up, we would all, and I'm the youngest of the youngest. So my mom is the youngest child, and then I'm the youngest grandchild. So the closest grandchild to me in age is 40 now, and I'm 30. So
Okay,
we have a little bit of a space between us. So I grew up, so I have like cousins like that are in their 50s. So I grew up with their kids.
okay,
So we would all go to my Grammy's house in the summer and just like ride bikes in the road and just hang with the local kids.
okay, okay. Did you have chores or responsibilities as a child?
Yes. Growing up, I remember the first time I had to like learn how to iron my own skirt. Very annoying stuff with the pleats. My mom, she put like those clips on the end of the skirt and she was like, make sure you fold each pleat. So I vividly remember that day. I was probably like in grade 5. I had just gone in grade 5. She's like, you're gonna be in high school soon. You need to get it together. So yeah, I vividly remember that day washing dishes when I was old enough to learning how to do laundry, sewing camp when I was 12, just general life skills. I was always tasked like when I turned like 13, I would always have to like clean the chicken for Sunday dinner, learn how to cut up things and how prepare food. Just like basic, I always tell people, the average, like the old school Bahamian woman is gonna raise a daughter to be a wife before anything. Nothing like, yeah, success, great, a job, great career, great, but she's gonna raise her to be a wife. And I mean, in that, like, raise her to be a caring and responsible human. So I know sometimes it's very easy to get stressed out and bogged down with the gender roles, but if you look at the innate value of the role, the considered role itself, like being able to prepare a meal, or these are like essential life skills. So I think that in the long run, I'm grateful. I feel like she was definitely harder on me than she was on my younger brother, but you know, such is life.
Yes, yes. What age did you learn how to cook and who taught you?
I think it was like a combination of just watching like my babysitter, watching my aunt, watching my Grammy, watching, I guess each my Grammy taught me how to make peas and rice. My mummy, and I think it's like the essence of cooking because I wouldn't say like I could throw down a real traditional Bahamian meal. Like I can make things and they would be okay, but like I can like cook really well, all kinds of other things. So like I make like really good pastas and I can bake and I can do all that stuff. And I think it's just like learning the skills of like this is how you season and you let this marinate. And so I think those kinds of things like frying out your pot, like if you wanted to have a fresher flavor, you don't fry it as brown. If you wanted to have a richer flavor, you fry the herbs browner. So just learning those like key skills.
Hmm.
I would say my mom had a big hand in that, but also, like I said, watching my Grammy cook, watching my aunt, the way she would prepare certain things, because my mom and her sisters, they all like have their own specialty. So you kind of like learn from everyone.
Hmm. Hmm.
The way I was raised, my dad wasn't really around, so it was a very communal style of um growing up for me, a very communal like family life.
Hmm. Hmm. That's beautiful. You mentioned having a family homestead and then everyone lived on the land, essentially.
Hmm.
Okay, and so what would a Sunday dinner look like or a family dinner look like in that communal setup?
Well, so that the homestay, I said it used to be like that, like back in the day. That's not how it is currently, but like some family members still have homes around there.
Okay.
But like Sundays, usually it's my aunts and their kids, and then for like special occasions, we would meet up. So like we have like Sunday dinner together as a family like once a month. Um, and we have like also like a family Zoom meeting once a month. But Sundays would usually be like people pairing off. So because my mom and my aunt who passed away, they were super close. We would always have Sunday dinner together. So it would be my mom, her sister, my brother, and then my aunt's son, my cousin, and we would all be there together.
Okay. So I know you mentioned, again, being an outdoorsy child. What types of things did you do for fun specifically?
I love to like ride bikes, climb trees, like just look at plants and animals, go in like the bush and just like see what we could find. My cousin and I were like very big into like building something every summer. So like one summer we tried to build a tree house, another summer we built a tire swing. Um, we also like would start like little businesses, like that kind of stuff. So we found like a big sour tree. So we started like making lemonade with that and like selling it. Um, yeah, just stuff like that.
Beautiful. So did your family attend church?
Yes. My grandfather who passed away was one of the first bishops in the Church of God, and he was the district overseer for Cat Island. My grandmother was an evangelist, and my family is still heavily involved in church.
What kind of impact would you say church had on your development?
Um, my social development, I think it made me like very unafraid because like, you know, you're participating in like plays and church productions and all these things like being a moderator at a service or, you know, reading a scripture on a Sunday. So I think it in that regard, it made me very unafraid. But it also made me very filled with questions very early. Um, I feel as though now that I'm older, I understand a lot more, but I think that um, I've had to unlearn a lot of things based on how I was raised. I was raised like Pentecostal Church of God. So, you know, everything that comes with that, like the body shaming, the repression, this idea of like original sin and just being innately evil. God outside of the self, all of these things I've been taught. And so I feel as though I appreciate all the experiences that I've gained in the deep connection because I feel as though people can have different paths to connect to the divine. Um, we're all not meant to follow one path, but we are all meant to end up at the same destination in the end. And I think, you know, for some people, certain things resonate with them more. And for me, I just have found myself still holding on to a lot of the truths that I gained from like the Pentecostal religion and Christianity, but also realizing that there's like so much more vastness to the truth. Like there's so many more um nuances to what we believe to be true and the things that actually hold the fabric of the universe together. So I don't know if that seemed too hooty dooty.
Oh, no, that's beautiful. So would you consider yourself now like more spiritual than religious?
Most definitely. Most definitely. Do I still say in Jesus' name, amen? Absolutely. Because like I said, entrenched in my being, you know, to the point where like I revere Jesus, but I also revere Buddha and I also revere Haile Selassie and I also revere like all of these other um great teachers. And I do believe that Jesus performed miracles because we can you know there are spiritual gifts and everybody's endowed with a different one. So I feel like, you know, there were people who walked on this earth who were much like closer on the other side of the veil than a lot of us are today.
Mhm.
um but I would definitely say I'm more spiritual, but I would never like in Christian terms, I would never denounce the name of Jesus Christ, if that makes sense.
Beautiful. No, I get that. I get that. So what is the your earliest memory of church that you can recall?
It's actually very traumatic.
Oh no.
So it was actually my grandparents' funeral.
Okay.
and I was 3, and I just remember like my mom crying hysterically, like I couldn't understand what was going on. I just vivid. That was the first time I remember a memory and remember confusion and like just like this very heavy feeling. Like I still think about that and I can like clearly see that picture in my that image in my mind.
Mm.
So not the best, but like church was a very big part of my childhood. Like I grew up in church, vacation Bible school, like choir, Christmas and Easter productions. When you got older, I was working in the sound room, like
Mhm.
moderating church services. I was nominated for like Youth of the Year for my church, like for the whole Church of God, and I think I came like second or something, or I won or something. Anyway, it was a very like much a big part of um my identity. But I remember in ninth grade, we did for our BJC, we had to research other religions. And I just like, I remember I went to the library right on Maki Street and I was sitting in there and I was reading all these books about these different religions. And I was just like, so you mean to tell me that it's really that similar? Like,
Mhm.
why are we being so hard on each other? And then when I got to college, I actually went to the Church of God school. Like that's how Church of God my family is. I went to the Church of God University in Tennessee. And um even when I got there, I remember for my first English class, we had to read some C.S. Lewis, and the first book we read by him was Mere Christianity, and he has this one chapter called like Mathematics, and he talks about how 2 + 2 is 4, but 3 + 1 is also 4, but 2 + 1 is 3, but it's closer to 4 than 0 + 1. And he said that's the same way we have to think about religion and our walk of faith, like how small minded it can it be of us to think that like the God of the universe would just appear to us in one way, in the way that we see fit. And so like just those kinds of thoughts, those kinds of like that kind of exposure and that kind of literature just me, and this is a man who's an atheist and became a Christian. And so for me, like all of these things kind of point to the greater question, like, and then you think about like the Council of Nicaea, like it was a bunch of dudes who decided which books went into the Bible. And so even that, and then there was a different Bible that slaves were given so they would be more obedient to their masters. And even as a Black person, I feel like we have to question, why do we hold on so tightly to all of these parts of Christianity that were used to like mentally enslave us? Like, how can you enslave a group of people who believe like, if I leave this body now, I will reincarnate back in Africa and not have to deal with y'all? Like, that's the only way you could get slaves across the Atlantic without ending, across with an empty boat.
Mhm.
So I think these are all things like, for me personally, I know people, they're good to go through life and never question anything. I know that was never my path. My first question was why. So I just know that like that was never my path. And I appreciate like the discomfort that comes from questioning things, because I feel like that's the only way like you get to maybe not everybody else's truth, but your truth, and like be able to actually advance your purpose on earth. So yeah, that's my view on religion.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. It's very much giving, take the meat and leave the bones and continue to build the pot you need,
Mhm.
right? I love that. I love that. Um, okay. What do you think is different between your parents' childhood growing up in the Bahamas and yours?
Um, I think I can't really like, my dad was like one of those parents that was there but like wasn't there.
Mhm.
And so like I can't really speak on so many stories or interactions that I have had with him. But as far as my mom goes, knowing her story and where she's come from, they were always taught that education is the key to getting ahead in life. And so I think the difference between my mom's childhood and my childhood was that she worked harder to give me more. And I think, but in her values, in the disciplines, in the way that she raised me, I think it's the same. And I think she tried to add some more tenderness to the way that she was parented to help raise me. Um, and so I think the only difference between my mom's upbringing and my upbringing is that I had a more tender, caring mom, who worked in a different field to get more means to give me more so I could like turn around and do the same thing for my kids. I don't know, is that kind of, or do you mean like more environmental wise?
Both. I mean all things. So yes, in the way that she raised you, but then also like living as children on the island, do you think
Mm.
there are any differences as well? Both. It can go any kind
Yeah,
of.
I mean, I think there are a lot of, I think because she grew up on the island at the time that she did, there was a lot less access just to all kinds of things. And so I think I have more access. I have more things readily available to me, more advanced technology. I mean, my mom always tells me about how like people would go to the registrar to like check their look get their birth certificate or get some kind of identification and they have the wrong birthday, the wrong name. Like I have an uncle, they don't know if his birthday is September 1st or September 2nd.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, September 2nd or September 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
My grandpa who passed away, his birthday was on the 16th or the 17th. My mom's dad, my grandfather, his birthday was like also on the 3rd and the 4th of March. My mom, when she went to the registrar, they had her name as something totally incorrect. So I think just like better like medical records and better access. I mean, still it's access is very lacking in the family islands, but there's a little bit more connectivity than when I was younger. So I think too, they had to rely on the land a lot more.
Mm-hmm. Do you have children?
I do not.
Okay, okay. What can you remember about your grandparents?
Um, Sad to say, like I was only 3 when they passed away, so
Okay.
most of my memory is what people have told me. But I do have like vague memories of my Grammy giving me ginger ale in a cup when nobody was looking. And then my granddad had this hat that he loved and cherished. And I remember I lost my balance and I fell backwards on it. And I was like trying to like fix it with my little like undeveloped motor skills.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember like he didn't yell at me like I thought he was going to.
Mm-hmm.
He just kind of laughed and took the hat and fixed it and picked me up and gave me a kiss. So yeah, I only have like those memories of my own. Those are all I can recall, but they're good ones.
Yes. Who is the oldest ancestor that you know or knew?
Oh, mommy, my uncle Rissy, my grandfather's brother's wife,
Okay.
mommy.
Grandfather's brother's wife. Okay, okay.
She died when she was 100.
Ooh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay. Was she in New Providence?
Yes, against her will.
Where did she want to go?
Cat Island.
Back to Cat Island.
They all want to just stay at Cat Island. They don't want
Uh-huh.
to move. And then the oldest ancestor that I know of is my grandmother's mother's mother. Minerva was her name.
Okay. Minerva. Okay, okay. Now, what do you do for a living?
I am a yoga instructor and herbalist.
I'm an herbalist. Okay, so that gets into my next questions are about bush medicine. And so did your family use bush medicine when you were a
Yes.
child? Okay.
Yes. So when I was a child, even before I was born, my grandfather and my grandmother, they made bush medicine for people all over Cat Island. So like people from different settlements would come and they would make them different concoctions. And so my grandfather was known for like making multiple babies at once, not like him himself, but like helping people who wanted to have kids with that kind of stuff. And then my Grammy just kind of did for all kinds of different stuff.
Okay. How do you use bush medicine and home remedies now?
Pretty much all the time. Like I traveled through the Atlanta airport yesterday and I ate some Chick-fil-A and made my stomach sick. And as soon as I got to like my cousin's house, I made like a decot of ginger and spearmint and chamomile because I was like having like stomach cramps and stuff. So I use home remedies like literally all the time. I will use home remedies if I could use it to replace surgery.
Mm-hmm.
So I use it, like I said, in my daily life all the time. My cousins come to me for stuff. I make stuff for myself. Um, I make stuff for my mom. Yeah, so in my daily life, but growing up, you know, the Cersei, fever grass, aloe, for cramps, they used to give us the lily, purple lily, blue flowers, um, all kinds of different home remedies like to break a fever. They rub you down in coconut oil and wrap you in plastic.
Really? I haven't heard that one. Tell me about it.
So literally that's all it is. They just like rub you down and the coconut oil, the cooked coconut oil, they rub you down
Mm-hmm.
in that, wrap you up in plastic,
Mm-hmm.
and then let you brew and sweat, 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 and then they put you in a tub of ice.
Mm. Okay. Can you think of
Yeah.
any other folk remedies like that that are like out of the box or um not necessarily herbal medicine?
Um, I don't know. My grandma who passed away, she believed in like purge for anything. Like if you have a cough more than 2 weeks, see baby, she about to purge you. So basically they just boil like a gallon of pond bush and then they stick their fingers all the way down your throat and they make you just like vomit and vomit and vomit the entire gallon back up. And it
Mm-hmm.
clears like all of the extra mucus on your chest. And so like when you're done doing that, like everything's out
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
clean.
Beautiful, beautiful. What would you say of the traditional Bahamian herbs are your top?
For me,
Mhm.
Gale of Wind is top internal use, and Rooster Comb is my top for external use.
Okay, Gale of Wind. Describe that to me. I haven't heard of that one.
Gale of Wind is what they call in Ayurvedic medicine stonebreaker,
Okay.
Chanca Piedra.
Okay.
It's a small like shrub, like it doesn't grow. They probably maybe can grow like this tall, but they're very slender. They're all green. They have small, so kind of think of like a young poinciana plant,
Okay.
but instead of those long dark green leaves, the leaves are like a little shorter, rounder, and like more lime green. And then underneath them, they have these little seeds on the bottom that open during the day and they close up at night along with the leaves.
And what would you use that for?
So that is like good for a multiplicity of things. So, um, it helps with free radicals in the body. It helps with liver function. It actually can help the liver cells regenerate. It is good for the whole urogyneary area. It literally is called chanca piedra, stone breaker, because it breaks up gallstones and kidney stones. It is good for any kind of cold, particularly good for like viruses, any kind of like HPV, HVS, gonorrhea. because it slows and actually heals cell mutation. So it fortifies the cell wall, so the cell wall doesn't break down, the virus can't get in and mutate the cell. So it is just like really an all around amazing plant. I love it so much. It is horrible. It tastes so bad. It's more bitter than Cersei. The only thing that I can think that is more bitter than Gale of Wind is probably neem. And if you know neem like so bitter, it stings.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the only other thing that I could think that is like worse than Gale of Wind. It's pretty horrible.
And what was the second plant?
It's called rooster comb or scorpion's tail. Heliotrope angiosperm is the scientific name, and it's not really a well-known plant. It's a really good plant. They used to use it back in the day, like if someone got an open wound, they would grind it up they would dry it and grind it up into a powder and then pack the wound with that. And it has very good like wound healing properties. It's good for scarring, any kind of like cellular issue with the skin, eczema, psoriasis, those kinds of things. It's very like soothing. It's also like pain relieving as well. So you can use it on wounds and cuts for that reason. It's good for bug bites. And just overall for the skin, you can boil it and make like an eye wash with it if you have pink eye. If you have like a sty on your eye, same thing, you can use it for that. Yeah, just like all kinds of stuff. Anything external. If you want to like make like a hydrosol for your face, like you can use that in it as well. If you make like your own toners at home, it's really good if you use it in a soap. Yeah, so it's like really good for external use.
Beautiful. Okay, so we're gonna pivot a little bit to women's ailments. And so do you remember when you first menstruated?
Yes, I do. It was a very big deal for everyone because I was 9.
Mm-hmm.
And it was at a birthday party, and I went to the bathroom. It was at my Grammy's house. It was like one of my cousin's birthday parties, I don't remember. And I went to the bathroom and I wiped, and my mom came in and she was like wondering why I was taking so long. And I was like in the bathroom, like trying to put like a band-aid like on, and she just started like crying hysterically. And I was like, oh my God, it's okay, it's just a cut.
Mm-hmm.
She was like, no, that's not a cut. And we had to have that talk. But yeah, I remember that day quite vividly.
So had you been prepared at all? I mean, 9 and 09 is younger, so you had
No, I wasn't, because I don't think that anybody expected it to come that early.
right, right. So do you recall any folk remedies, taboos, or superstitions surrounding the menstruation cycle?
Yeah, I remember one time my mom I wanted to go to this pool party and my period was on. So she woke me up like at 5 o'clock in the morning and had me start drinking vinegar and water, which is apparently supposed to like slow up the cycle.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't work. But I thought it was cute that she tried. She was so stressed about it. And in my mind, I'm just like, if it's normal, then I'll just like bleed in the pool.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I was still too like young to understand all of the things that people feel about periods and blah blah blah. So yeah, what else? I mean, honestly, all the folk remedies. Now, rooster comb it has a high alkaloid count, so you really shouldn't ingest it too often. And if you do, you have to ingest it like under the instruction of someone who knows how to use it. But when I started to have really bad period cramps, my Grammy or my mom started giving me that. And it was very helpful. But again, like she did it based on my weight and all kinds of other things based on the plant she was mixing it with. So like certain plants like rooster comb, if you do give it to people, you have to mix it with something that's gonna like support the liver, like gale of wind or like milk thistle or a Spanish thyme or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Um, who taught you about herbs?
So let's see. it's kind of been like, again, that kind of like you learn something a little bit from everybody. But when I really started to anchor down, um, was when my Grammy started helping me a lot. So this is my oldest aunt that I call my Grammy, but
Mhm.
just because she's the one, like I tell people how I describe it, it's like bush medicine is like this layered cake. And at the surface level, you have like fever grass, like the frosting is fever grass, cerasee, and neem, or like fever grass, cerasee, and something else that people commonly use. And then like you have all these different layers and layers and layers, and at the center is like the filling of the cake. But only so many people, like a very small amount of people, have that filling knowledge. Everybody else has like different layers, right? But it's such a deep practice. And I think that it's hard for us to fully grasp it without having that lived experience, and not being able to like truly connect to people who have that full textured knowledge, because I feel like there's a real gap in our parents, and then a lot of the us like younger ones now, like we want to know, but then there's only like Grammy and great Grammy who already passed away, and like Grammy who you could only gain so much from, because she still didn't know as much as great Grammy. Because I feel like over the years, like the Bahamians as a society, we've tried to advance ourselves and make ourselves more sophisticated by separating ourselves from these things that we call bush. So like I stopped calling it bush medicine. Like I call it traditional Bahamian medicine, because that's what it is. Like, why do Chinese get to call it that and we can't call it that?
Right.
And I think that um one thing that I've learned within this whole thing is like the need to decolonize, right? Because I feel like everybody is so entrenched in this idea, like you have to have the credentials and you have to have this and you have to have that. Well, that's not the way that my ancestors did it. And everything that we have today is like, as soon as a white person comes in and they hear like, oh, these people have been using this for centuries, it now becomes like a superfood. And then the people who used to use it and it was a real part of their culture, they're now like the ones estranged from it, right? Because now people want to come in with market and industry and start harvesting these things and racking up the prices. So things that people used to have access to, that was normal for them to have, they're like the ones furthest estranged from their practices. And I feel like we need to look at this and be like, this didn't just start happening. Like our traditional medicine practices and all of these things that people are coming back, repackaging and selling back to us in these herbal courses that we see online. These are the things that our ancestors knew for like ever. The only reason for me why I started to do like more like scholarly study when it came to herbs is because I was asking my Grammy, okay, 3 5s and 7s. Why is that? Why is it like that?
Mm-hmm.
Why is it this herb and that herb? Why do these two specific herbs go together?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, I don't know, that's just what I was taught. I don't know, that's what they used to do. So for me, that's where the shortcoming came, and I needed to know more. And in that regard, I didn't even look at it as a like needing these credentials to appease someone else. It was more for me to like understand like the chemical makeup of plants and why they work the way they do. And then science comes back and just confirms what our ancestors have been saying for like years. Like in different, if you look at different brews, like the 3s, the 5s, although like that comes out of Obeah, like the whole truth behind it is like some plants have like 33% of a phytochemical, another one may have like 66%, and then the other plant might have the remaining. And when you put them in, you get the perfect amount of that chemical that you need to make the brew kick the way it needs to. And so like all of these things kind of just feed into the fact that I actually don't need these credentials and stuff, because it takes away the validity of the people who began these practices and who have the true knowledge. And then they understand that these plants aren't to be used in like isolations and extractions, right? Like, because even in Ayurvedic medicine, in all of these traditional practices of medicine, it's understood that health is a part of the grand scheme. Health is communal, health is emotional, health is spiritual and physical. And so I think even that Western idea of just taking from all these different ethno-medicinal practices and just like kind of plugging them in where they need them, you know, to feed consumer culture is just like it's damaging to both the validity of the knowledge of the original people, and it's also damaging to those people it's themselves because now they're being estranged from their own practices.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You said a mouthful there. So what do you think the solution is? Or if you could, I mean, you're young and you're a young herbalist in the Bahamas. So what is the solution?
I think the solution is education, to help people understand that um, these practices, these are not like beneath you. You know, there's more to life than being a doctor and a lawyer. You know, like when you think about the preservation of our culture and our history and how deeply that's tied to spirituality and how deeply that's tied to our traditional practices, like we have to understand that we need to pay more attention and be more curious about it, because if we aren't, people are going to see the value in what we have and just take it from us, and we'll never get any real benefit from it. You know what I mean? So I think a big part of it is education, helping people like to understand, like, you know, you can heal your body, you can heal your body and the earth and the community all together.
Mm-hmm.
And just like empowering yourself through knowledge, because I feel like if people actually understood the imminent danger of climate change in the especially to our identity as Bahamians, I think then, you know, we would be able to approach everything a lot differently. From we start to interact with our environment differently. But I just think that we're just kind of a far ways off from that right now. I mean, you know, you have a lot of people who are realizing this and coming together and trying to like make a difference and spread the education and um, help people to realize. But also, you know, you have that idea that there's something like kind of archaic about bush medicine.
Yes, yes. Woo, I have so many questions swarming. Okay. So, okay. Building on what you're talking about as far as us as a community or as a culture, or our parents' generation rather, like wanting to be more like modern, right? And like
Mm-hmm.
globalization kind of taken over. And so that there's that generational gap in practice. How much, if any of that, can we contribute to our identity or lack thereof as African people and
In
blackness or Africanness?
You mean contribute what to our Africanness? The fact that we want to be more modern?
The fact that we like forgot or stopped doing, like, okay, let me reframe my question. So what I find is a lot of us are reclaiming our indigenous knowledge and practices, and our parents' generation wanted better. You know, they wanted better. Like we talk about like moving from the bush, right? Um, Perhaps they stopped drinking bush medicine in the morning and started just drinking Lipton tea. Or how much of that, like walking away from that knowledge, is what is I'm trying to get my question together here. Like
I think
without like
I'm picking up what you're putting now. So I think that that gap came from, because that generation is the generation that switched over from colonialism to independence. And I think that that has a big part to play in how they conceptualize the world. Because a lot of them, you will hear them say like, yeah, I thought it was better under Britain. Like they'll say that straight up. They'll be like, you don't realize the beauty of being an independent country. Um, but I think because they for example, like I was not allowed to speak with a Bahamian dialect until I was 12 because my mommy had to be sure that I could speak the Queen's English.
Mhm.
And so I think for them, they have this mark, a certain like idea of what an educated, highfalutin social elite person should be like. And I think that's why this idea of the doctor and the lawyer is just so prominent in our culture and as like in African culture in general, because we feel like that's going to give us acceptance into the mainstream, and things like agriculture and farming and herbalism and spiritual practices and all these things, like they make you more primitive, right? So I think their minds are still very colonialized in that way. And sorry, I was gonna say something else, but I forgot. Yeah, but I just think that that's a big contributing factor to why there is like, it's kind of like, I think also you could look at it similarly like when um that first generation of like Latinos come to America, like that second generation, there's not a high likelihood that they're going to speak Spanish because they really want to assimilate into the culture. And I think it's that same kind of thing. Like those, that set of Bahamians, that particular cohort, they wanted to just like assimilate into kind of that British culture and just like fit into what was going on and kind of like hold that kind of power or idea of what they think was good for the next generation. And we're just like, hold on, no, we're free.
Mhm.
So I think that that's they like purposely, you know, pushed away those things. And I feel like even now, because I have friends that are in agriculture, and even now there's an issue of, okay, well, we are a country not only of like 500,000, but we have millions of tourists that come through this country every year, and we don't have the resources to feed them. We import literally everything. And so, although we wanted to have this idea that we are like this highfalutin society with like all this soft industry of banking and finance, like we cannot feed ourselves. And what good is any of that if everybody's hungry?
Mhm.
And so I think we've kind of tried to separate ourselves so far because slavery and blackness is so tied to the land. We've tried to like separate ourselves so much from the land that we like lock ourselves in offices and really like disconnect ourselves so we can be seen as not that anymore.
Mhm. Mhm. No, that's beautiful. I totally appreciate that explanation. Um, do you yourself, how do you identify ethnically or racially?
Black,
Okay.
blackity black. Although my grandmother, my dad's mom was Kunky Joe,
Okay.
and my like,
Could you explain just what a
oh,
concho
Punky Joe
is?
is a Euro Bahamian is what I'll
Okay.
go with for that purpose. And then my like way back grandmother was an Arawak Indian who married or who was a partner with a slave. So they, I don't know if they had married or whatever, but they were together. They went together.
Right. Now that's beautiful. So that makes me think about Puerto Rico specifically and how the Tainos interbred with the slaves, and we have this resurgence of um, Latinx people from Puerto Rico saying like, hey, no, actually, I have a small percentage of Taino, and the Brits falsely claiming that they killed all the Indians or Native Americans. And so how does that relate to the Arawak ancestry of the Bahamas? And do you think it relates at all?
I mean, like you have entire like last names of people who are descendants of Arawaks. I can't recall all of them, but I know one of them is the Sullivans in the Bahamas. They're like direct descendants of Arawaks. And so I think um they're few and far between, but there were more native people that survived.
Mhm.
You know, they didn't kill all of them.
Okay.
I mean, a lot, but not all.
Yes, yes. That's beautiful. Okay, so um, hurricanes have shaped and reshaped a lot of the land and infrastructure in the Bahamas. How have hurricanes changed the island you live on, if at all? And what is your earliest memory of a hurricane?
I think my earliest memory of a hurricane probably was about when I was like 9. I don't remember which hurricane it was. Um, but I feel like the only thing I remember was like me and my brother riding around in his truck to check on all our family members during the eye of the storm. Which is like totally irresponsible, but you know how that is.
Mhm,
Yeah, I just remember it being very fun. I think it was the danger.
mhm. Um, what do you wish to see as the Bahamas develops?
Mm, more real Bahamian based investment, more ownership for Bahamians, particularly when it comes to land. Um, and I think more benefit on our natural resources. You know, there are barges and barges of sand being taken out of our country. And the Bahamian, like with the amount of money that we make off of natural resources or that someone's making off of our natural resources, I don't think that there should be anywhere in Nassau or anywhere in the Bahamas where people don't have running water.
Mhm,
So I think more benefits for Bahamians based on the amount of land that's being sold off. You know, we have the Crown Act, so that means there should be a public fund where money from land sold goes back into a treasury and then is dispersed to the people. So none of these things are happening. We don't have any real say. You know, our politicians, you know, they just sign off on things, and then next thing you know, we in a 100-year contract with Sun Oil. So I think um, more responsible governance as we develop. And I really would like to see a better education system, an improved education system, something more fortified, something that encourages free and critical thinking. Because I think you can only call a country a democracy if it has the educated population to support a democracy, because without that you just have like a bunch of blind people blindly following. And so I think as far as development goes, I would love to see some more fortitude in the educational department so we can actually call ourselves a democracy honestly, where people can critically think, you know, like how they have people laugh at the American presidential debate, but at least they have one. We've never had the two leaders of the opposite opposing parties get up and discuss. You know, they have a whole like development plan for the country, and each party they got together with people from different sectors in different industries. You know, and they came up with this way forward that both parties, no matter who's in power, should be abiding by, and they like never even check for it. So it's like, you know, the average Bahamian doesn't even know that exists. You know, the average Bahamian doesn't know the Constitution. They don't know their real rights. They get bullied around by the police. They get tricked by the government. So I really would like to see a way forward where Bahamians have more involvement and they have the comprehension skills and the education so that when they do get a seat at the table, they say something meaningful, something that'll make a difference. Because I feel as though, like, you know, a lot of times if people, if these are the best and brightest minds you have in this situation, they could be the best and brightest, but what are they saying that is making a difference when you give them the seat at this table? Are they just another like puppet in your scheme?
Mhm.
So for me, I think real Bahamian ownership, real Bahamian education, real Bahamian like power. I think people don't understand the weight that they carry as a voter and the way that they can demand things based on the power of their vote. I think we behave like it's a favor that these people are doing for us.
Mhm.
And so I just, if we had a better education system so people could understand the role that they play in a real democracy, I think our country could move forward in a much better way that really supports Bahamians and Bahamians having ownership in the economy instead of creating this new neo-colonial society with all these plantations, I mean hotels, all over the place, you know. I think those are things that, because right now we're just producing workers.
Mhm.
And I would like to see that change because I mean we bring in expats, we pay them, we pay for their work visa, we pay them the in most hotels, the expat, their pay cap begins where the Bahamian pay cap ends. So they have a certain amount that they pay Bahamians and they won't pay above that. And they start expats there. And
Mm.
their pay cap is like almost 2 to 3 times higher. Plus, they're getting like help with accommodations. They're getting like relocation fee. They get their work visa paid for. If they had a family, their whole family would move here. Their kids would be in school. So I think our leaders and our people, everybody just needs like, I pray us free from that mental slavery because it's that behavior that encourages, it's that mentality that encourages this behavior, right? Like we
Mhm.
see our fellow Bahamian, you who've been to school for 120 years, they'll still go and hire a gender specialist from somewhere else
Mhm.
and pay
Mhm.
for their whole family to move there so they could work there for 2 years, work in a community they don't understand, around people they never experienced and can't understand us half the time. Yet they're
Mhm.
supposed to be there doing meaningful work when they have people with the credentials. And that's why I always say the Bahamas is the way it is because our government officials want it to be that way. There is no industry on earth. There is no industry on this earth that a Bahamian does not have their hand in. I mean, look at the head of operations for Delta, Bahamian, graduated from St. Anne's.
Mhm.
There's a gentleman advising politicians in Switzerland. He's on the advisory council, Bahamian. You see what I'm saying? People all over the world doing great work. Bahamians all over the world, engineering. I mean, you name it.
Mhm.
Bahamians are doing it, but it is this idea that it has to be somebody else. And I mean, who is going to do it with more like zeal and vigor than a Bahamian doing it for Bahamians?
Mhm.
And so there's so much I want for my people, but I think it all starts with the education. If we do not get a better educational system, we don't stand a chance because a population that cannot comprehend the scope of their problem is an even bigger problem than they could ever imagine.
Yes. Yes. I thank you for sharing those thoughts. So that brings me to the end of my questions. On behalf of the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me. Before we end this session, do you have anything else you would like to clarify or add?
I hope that globally, people of color, people of any ethnic background can get back to their traditional healing practices. I feel like the separation of medicine from the earth and the separation of medicine from spirituality has led us into this place where we're more comfortable to see people die for profit than we're willing to explore the true ways of healing them. And so that is like one of my prayers every day is that every person, no matter where they're from, no matter what their heritage is, they get back to their traditional healing practices, because that's the only way that we can cure everything that's going on in the world right now, is if everybody gets back to their roots and remember, their ancestral ways of healing.